Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. I always believed rules kept a family strong, rules rooted in love, respect, and order. But I never imagined the most unthinkable unraveling would begin when my own son decided to break one. Not just any rule, but the one unspoken, the one sacred. The one I never thought would need to be said out loud. It started with a summer that had no business feeling so warm, so still. My son, Aiden, had just returned from college for break. He was 20, taller than I remembered, with broader shoulders and a tone in his voice that surprised me. No longer the boy who once clung to my hand in grocery store aisles. I was proud of the man he was becoming, though a distance had crept in between us over the past couple of years. I blamed time, distance, and the inevitable detachment of adulthood. We lived in a quiet suburb in upstate New York. My husband, Greg, and I had been married for 19 years. On the outside, we looked like the family others envied: stability, success, and almost bland happiness. But beneath the structure, the smiles, and the holiday cards, something had long since broken. Greg and I no longer spoke the language of lovers. We were business partners at best, joint managers of a life we'd once dreamed together, now just coexisting beneath the same roof. Greg traveled often, too often. And I didn't ask questions anymore. The loneliness crept in gradually. The way water leaks through a crack in the ceiling, quiet, unnoticed. Until the ceiling caves. It was a Thursday night in late June when things began to shift. I remember it because the power had gone out after a sudden summer storm, and we lit candles in the kitchen. Aiden had been helping me clean up after dinner. Greg was in Chicago for a conference. We were laughing, really laughing over some silly memory of him as a toddler, his head stuck in the banister, crying dramatically. His eyes lit up in the way they hadn't for years. For a moment, I wasn't just mom to him. I was someone with her own past, her own humor, her own glow. "You're different lately," he said softly as I handed him a wet plate. "Lighter, but sadder too." I looked at him, startled. "You always saw more than I wanted you to." "I had to," he shrugged. "Neither of you talk anymore. You think I don't notice?" I sat down, suddenly drained. We just drifted. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me. "So why stay?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. He was my son. There were answers I owed him, and others I never could. That night changed something in him, or maybe in me. Over the next few days, he stayed closer, helped more around the house, cooked breakfast for me, cleaned up without being asked, sat beside me during old movies. It was innocent, but charged with something I didn't understand yet, or maybe didn't want to admit. One evening, I came home from a walk and found him in the kitchen again, shirtless, listening to music and chopping vegetables. I stared too long, and he noticed. "Something wrong?" he asked, almost amused. "No," I murmured, flustered. "You just remind me of someone I used to know." He tilted his head. "Was he good to you?" I hesitated. At first. A long silence passed between us. "I would be," he said, almost in a whisper, "if I could be." I left the room in a daze. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were loud, chaotic, full of guilt and confusion. The lines were blurring dangerously so. I told myself it was the emotional drought I'd been living in, that my loneliness was twisting things. The next day, he confronted me again. This time in the backyard where I was tending the garden. "You won't talk to Dad. You won't leave. You just survive. But this house, this life, it's killing you." I stood up, brushing dirt from my hands. "You don't know what you're saying, Aiden. I know more than you think. I see you every day, pretending." He took a step closer. "Why won't you let someone care for you?" His hand brushed my arm, gentle but deliberate. I pulled back. "Because it's wrong. Because you're my son." He looked at me, his voice low. "And yet you didn't move sooner." I stopped and thought it wasn't hard. but it was enough to draw a line. He turned and walked away without a word. We didn't speak for 2 days. Greg came home. Things returned to the cold, formal silence we called marriage. But Aiden barely looked at me. I told myself it was for the best. Then came the night Greg left again. This time to Denver. I came downstairs to find Aiden packing a small bag. "I'm going back early," he said flatly. "To school." My chest tightened. But summer just started. "I need space," he said, not looking at me. "Before we do something we can't come back from." I reached out, touching his shoulder. "I never wanted any of this to happen." "I know," he said, his voice cracking. "But it did, and I'll hate myself if I stay." That night, after he left, I sat on the porch until sunrise, questioning every choice I'd made in the past 2 decades. I hadn't crossed a physical line, but the emotional betrayal was undeniable. Weeks passed. Greg never noticed a thing. But I couldn't stop thinking about the boy who had seen through me, who had dared to challenge the fragile world I'd built out of duty and fear. In breaking the rules, Aiden had shown me just how broken they already were. I never told Greg. I never told anyone. But something in me changed forever that summer. And no matter how many seasons pass, I will always remember the moment my son challenged the rules and how the truth nearly shattered everything we were supposed to protect. I thought his absence would bring relief, but instead, it hollowed me out in ways I wasn't prepared for. The house was quieter, yes, but not peaceful. It echoed differently without Aiden's footsteps, without his half-finished mugs of coffee on the counter, without his occasional bursts of music from the upstairs bedroom. Everything reminded me of him and of the look in his eyes that last night, part pain, part guilt, part something else we didn't dare name. I busied myself with things, cleaning, gardening, rearranging the living room. I even tried to initiate conversation with Greg, who responded with the same cordial disinterest he always did. I looked at this man I'd shared a bed with for almost 20 years, and I felt like I was living beside a stranger. I'd been, for a long time, I thought about telling him, confessing, not what happened, but the truth that lived under it, that I was lonely, starved for connection, for attention. That someone, even if it was our son, had reminded me I still had a heart that could ache and beat and tremble. But I couldn't, because even if Greg had heard me, he wouldn't have understood. Aiden didn't call, and I didn't call him. A silent pact we'd made with our silence, but it didn't last. Too. Months passed. One humid August evening, while Greg was away again, I received a text. "Aiden, I'm sorry for everything. I just needed to feel something. I didn't mean to hurt you." My heart stopped. My fingers trembled over the keyboard. I could have ignored. It should have, but I replied. "Me, you didn't hurt me. I hurt myself for letting it go so far. But I miss you." He didn't answer immediately. Then, "Aiden, I think about you every day. About what almost happened. What we didn't let happen. But I still wish it had." I put my phone down and wept. Silent, heavy sobs into my pillow. Because I wished it too. I had no right to. But I did. He returned in December for winter break. Told myself I would be strong. That we would pretend everything was normal. That time had made it distant enough to ignore. But the moment I saw him at the front door, snowflakes caught in his hair, his eyes searching mine with that same quiet desperation, I knew pretending would be impossible. We embraced, cautiously. At first, but lingered too long. I felt it. So did he. Greg was home that week. It was the only reason we managed to keep our distance. The tension was unbearable. Aiden was quieter than usual, polite, even distant. But his eyes never stopped, following me, and mine betrayed me every time he walked into the room. Then, one night, Greg got a last-minute call from his company. A fire to put out in Dallas. He'd be gone for 3 days. I didn't sleep the first night. The second night, I found Aiden outside on the patio, smoking a cigarette, watching the snow fall. He rarely smoked. Only when something was weighing on him, He didn't turn when I slid the door open and stepped out beside him. "You're cold." I whispered, "So are you." He murmured, "Dot." We stood in silence for a long time. Then he said, "You ever think about what might have happened if I hadn't left in June?" I closed my eyes. "Every day." He looked at me, then really looked at me, and said the words I never expected to hear. "I love you. Not like a son, not like I should. I've tried to stop it. I thought leaving would help, but nothing's changed." My breath caught. "You don't mean that," I whispered. "I do." I shook my head, stepping back. "Hayden, no, this isn't love. This is confusion, emotion, loneliness." He moved closer. "No, that's what you tell yourself because it's safer. But I saw you that night. I see you now. This is real. And I'd give anything if the world didn't make it wrong." I was trembling, my whole body, because I wanted to believe him. "Please," I whispered. "Don't make me want something I can't have." He stepped forward slowly, and in the soft hush of falling snow, he kissed me, Dot. It was gentle at first. I brushed in. I didn't stop him. Then I kissed him back. I don't know how long we stood out there. Minutes, maybe hours. But it never went further. I couldn't let it. I pulled away before it crossed the final line. "I can't," I breathed. "No matter how much I want to, I can't." He looked down, ashamed. "I'm sorry." "I'm not," I said. "But we have to bury this deep where it can't hurt anyone else." He left again the next day, Dot, and that was the last time I saw him for over a year. He transferred schools, moved to California. We spoke rarely. Short messages, birthdays, holidays. Greg never suspected a thing, but I was never the same Dot, not because I crossed a line, but because I came so close to doing it, and part of me still wished I had. Because sometimes the things that destroy us are the very things that made us feel alive again. Aiden never came home again after that winter. Not even for holidays. Greg would ask casually, then stop asking altogether. "He's busy," I would say. "He's finding his own life," and that was true. He graduated early, moved west, built a career, and sent postcards I never showed. Greg. I followed his life in the shadows, Instagram stories, job updates, a glimpse in a friend's photo, but I never dared message him directly again. I told myself it was better that way. Safer, wiser. But I thought of him constantly. I'd be in the grocery store and pass the cereal he used to eat as a boy. Or I'd make tea and remember how he used to tease me about how weak I made it. The memories weren't loud. They lived like dust settled in corners, easy to ignore if you didn't look directly at them. But they were everywhere, Greg, and I continued our marriage like two people sharing a lease, not a life. We had separate routines, separate bedrooms eventually. I sometimes imagined confronting him, confessing everything, tearing the veil away, but I knew he wouldn't fight. Greg had stopped fighting for me years ago. That was the quiet heartbreak of it. We weren't at war, we were ghosts in the same house. Then, one late April evening, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and felt the world tilt. Aiden stood there, older, now more refined, his face chiseled with time and responsibility. He wore a dark coat and carried no bags, just a single envelope in his hand. "I was in town," he said softly. "I needed to see you." I opened the door wider, unsure if I was shaking or frozen. He stepped in, slowly, carefully, like the house itself might recognize him and collapse. Greg was out of town again. Business, as always. We sat in the kitchen at the same table where this all began. I made coffee, hands trembling, pretending not to look at him. "You cut your hair," I said to fill the silence, "and you haven't changed at all," he said. "Still beautiful." I looked down. He placed the envelope on the table between us. "I'm engaged." I felt my breath catch. "She's good to me," he continued. "Honest, kind. I think I love her. I want to." My fingers grazed the envelope, but I didn't open it. "So why are you here?" His voice was quiet. Because I needed to look you in the eye and know I could live the rest of my life without this haunting me. I swallowed. And? I can't, he said. Even now, after all this time, tears welled up in my eyes. I turned away. Then why marry her? Because you'll never be mine, he said, and I need something that is. I stood up, backing away, heart pounding. You can't say these things, I whispered. Not anymore. I never stopped loving you. Stop? I said sharply. This isn't fair. You were supposed to forget. He stood now too. Taller than me, stronger, but wounded, always wounded. I tried, he said. But some feelings don't fade. They root. They live. And even if I never see you again, I needed you to know. I never betrayed you in my heart. I turned to the window, gripping the counter to steady myself. I built my life around forgetting you, I said through tears. Don't tear it down. He walked up behind me, close but not touching. I'm sorry, he whispered, for loving you the way I did, for making you carry it alone. I turned then, facing him. You didn't make me carry it. I chose to. I chose to protect you from the world. From me. His eyes searched mine. Can I hold you? Just once? I hesitated, then I nodded. He wrapped his arms around me, warm, steady, full of everything we'd never said. It wasn't lust. It wasn't longing. It was grief, poured into the only embrace it ever belonged to. We stood there for a long time. Two people who had once come close to breaking the world and instead broke themselves. Then he pulled back. I'll go now, he said. You won't hear from me again. But I had to see you before I said yes to a life that doesn't have. You in it? I nodded, tears silent on my cheeks. He walked to the door. Opened it, pause, double quotes. I still think about that night in the snow. He said and then he was gone. That was 2 years ago. I never saw him again. But sometimes, in the quiet moments early, morning light pouring through the window, the sound of wind against the glass, I feel him. Not in the way I did then. Not with ache or guilt or trembling desire, but as something deeper. A reminder that even the rules we never speak aloud can break. And when they do, they leave fault lines inside us that never fully close. And maybe that's what love is sometimes. Not the joy, not the sweetness, but the weight of what we almost had and chose to let go. Time passed as it always does. 2 years became 3. Seasons cycled through the trees outside my window, like they had no memory of what had once happened beneath their branches. Greg and I eventually separated, quietly, without lawyers or drama. We just stopped pretending. He moved to a small apartment downtown. There were no accusations, no confrontations, just 2 people finally releasing a grip that had never really held anything at all. I stayed in the house, alone. By then, it had become my sanctuary, my penance, and my memory all in one. I never remarried. I never tried to date again, not because I was punishing myself, but because a part of me had already been spoken for. And even in his absence, I never gave that part away. Then, one autumn morning 5 years after Aiden had last stood on my porch, I received a letter, no return address. Just my name on the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in that familiar, steady script I hadn't seen in so long. Mom, I've never known what to call you when writing to you. Like this. But Mom still feels both sacred and painful. I'm writing from a hospital in San Francisco. Nothing dramatic, just a surgery and some recovery time. But being here alone, with nothing but time to think, I realized something. I've spent years trying to build a life that looked right. One that was safe, respectable, distant from everything I felt for you. But even now, lying in this bed with a wife who barely knows how I take my coffee and a daughter I'm afraid to fail, I still carry you, not with guilt, but with love. And I've realized something I should have said years ago. You were the first person who ever made me feel completely seen. And though what we felt could never be allowed, I don't regret it. Not a moment of it. Because you showed me what love was supposed to feel like, terrifying, raw, and devastatingly real. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know, if I don't wake up from this, I wanted the truth between us to be whole, and if I do, I'll still carry you forever dash. If you didn't, I didn't cry. Not right away. I just sat in the stillness of the kitchen, the sun pouring through the window, the letter in my hands like a final echo of a truth we both tried so hard to bury. That night, I lit a candle and wrote back. Not to send, but because some words are only meant to be spoken once, in the quiet of your own soul. My dear Aiden, you were never meant to love me like that. And I was never meant to feel it back, but we did, and in doing so, we touched something. Sacred and dangerous and unrepeatable. You gave me something I never expected to feel again. The knowledge that I was still alive, still capable of being wanted, of being seen. You didn't ruin me. You saved me from disappearing. I pray your daughter knows a version of your love that is safe, that she sees your eyes and not your regrets, that she feels the heart I once held so briefly and knows what a rare and beautiful thing it is. I won't see you again. That's the price we've both agreed to pay, but I will never forget you, not in the stillness of morning, not in the weight of snow, not in the echo of every unspoken word we never dared to say aloud. Be well, be whole, be forgiven. Always yours in silence. Harry folded the letter and tucked it inside my journal, where no one would find it, and I moved on, not by forgetting, but by honoring what was and what could never be again, because some loves are not meant to last. Only to awaken us, that remind us that we lived once, even when we shouldn't have.